medications, in my mind, always should have been viewed and always should be viewed as a tool. They are a tool in the toolbox. They are not a necessary intervention by any means, but they're a very effective tool. A lot of the information you get from the pharma industry, these data, it tends to be presented in the most favorable light for their medication, and that can actually be misleading with regards to when certain things should be prescribed.
Now let's get a little personal with you from the perspective of the work that you had done in the past. Do you can you share a story? I mean, we've talked about barriers to people getting better or controlling their diabetes or managing their diabetes, reversing it in some cases successfully. And again, barriers have, as we've talked about, barriers come in many different categories, right? You've got access to care, you've got education, you've got access to food. You've got the food deserts, you've got all sorts of barriers that people deal with. Can you share a story where you actually came across where a barrier to a specific patient or a group of individuals made it difficult for them to control their diabetes? And then on the flip side, where you felt that the collaboration between you and a patient help mitigate some of the barriers so they could control and manage their diabetes better?
All right. Well, I'll tell you one that was one of the more frustrating episodes that I had. A woman who came to me. This was very much towards the tail end of my time in clinical practice. I was working in direct care, and she worked for a local business that paid her monthly membership. Had very limited financial resources. She was a secretary in a very basic office, did not have much of an educational background. She had not
Mm.
graduated high school. And she was very heavily overweight. She came in with the idea that her weight was genetically predisposed
Ah,
entirely because most of her family was overweight. But if you got into what her eating habits were, they were not very productive. She was eating a lot of fast food, and there was a lot of room for improvement there. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have a lot of time with her before the business she was working for discontinued their memberships with us, and again, and she lost access to healthcare entirely at that point. So we didn't have a lot of success with her, especially too that one of the things that I realized she needed more than anything was to see some success in weight loss, and just to get that idea that this can be done. And I wanted so badly at the time. At the time, lariglutide, Victoza, had recently been approved in a version for weight loss called Saxenda, and it at the time was the most effective weight loss drug that we had on the market. And I was trying to get her approved through a patient's assistance program, and there were some issues because of her education, getting the information from her necessary in order to get her approved for it. But I just knew, God, if I can get her on this drug, in addition with continuing to counsel her, she can get that little push over the edge that'll get her that idea in her head. Yeah, I can really do this. I've seen it with other patients before. And if you want to contrast that, I had another patient who was an large vehicle mechanic working mostly on long haul diesel trucks and tractors and stuff like that. And he had injured his back. He had a very big belly that was probably part of the issue for that. And I diagnosed him with diabetes when he came in. He had no idea he had the problem. He had an A1C of almost 11.
oh my God.
So very poorly controlled, and probably had it for quite some time and didn't realize it. One of his complaints to me was that he was urinating all the time. And that's what tipped me off, like, oh, we got to look at this. And sure enough, he had an issue. Well, I did get him on Victoza and a couple other medications, some of the newer ones. Fortunately, he had decent insurance coverage. And we started the process of talking about how he ate and
Mm.
what kind of things he was consuming. And we were able to figure out some things over the course of about 6 months that he could change to where he was prepping almost all of his food on the weekends. He worked about 50 or 60 hours, but it was over 5 days.
Mm.
And so he had Saturday and Sunday, and he and his wife would get together and produce all the food that he would take to work during the week. And that gave him the time so that he wasn't just going and grabbing something from Burger King, which happened to be his go-to prior to that.
Aye.
And between the medications and these dietary interventions, he lost 146 pounds in 1 year.
Wow, that's
And
impressive.
and I bumped into him about 7 months ago, and he was kind of mad at himself because he'd regained 11 of the 140 some that he'd lost, and he was working to lose that again, but he knew how,
Yeah.
and there was no doubt he was going to be successful. And his last hemoglobin A1C was 5.1.
Oh my God.
So yeah, you talk about a success story. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, no, that's remarkable. And yeah, unfortunately for that, the first patient that you mentioned, her situation did not lend itself for her to be able to get the help. But this gentleman, again, it succeeded and
Mhm.
stuck with it. And that is a remarkable transformation. And what I'd love to hear from you on the same trajectory, same path is the tools to be able to support these sorts of patients or these this sort of lifestyle changes. Do you feel, and if so, that digital tools, be it CGMs? I mean, obviously CGMs have been a big boost to be able to control, monitor the blood glucose, but digital tools like telehealth, like apps that are focused on transformation, right? Not just recommendation, but transformation. Can they? How can they help patients, if at all?
Well, I think they can help a lot. And I'm personally a little higher on continuous glucose monitoring
Mm,
than some of my colleagues because there have been some large studies and meta-analyses looking at the impact of CGMs just standardly on glycemic control. And they're in patients that aren't on insulin, they haven't shown really great outcomes. But I think that's more of a misuse factor than it is a problem with CGMs. And my belief is that objective feedback for patients on any kind of disease intervention, when
mm,
you have objective feedback to things that they are trying to implement,
mm,
it's
mm,
always of use
mm.
and increases the efficacy of those interventions. And the part of what y'all are doing here at Heald that excites me is the potential for people to see how a specific meal impacts their blood sugars, how a specific exercise intervention impacts them. And you can see that in real time and get the objective feedback of, oh gosh, I really shouldn't have had that cookie.
Yeah,
That, or conversely, God, adding broccoli to that meal, look what that did to my blood sugars.
yeah,
Those kind of bits of feedback are invaluable,
yeah,
and that is what excites me about the potential for some of these things. Is especially if you can make it a little easier for people to track what they are consuming and
mm,
to really have a good record of it. That any barrier that we can remove as far as difficulty or level of effort needed to give feedback is so useful.
yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, and thank you for giving us the due on what we're trying to accomplish. As we're getting more and more educated about different aspects, different ingredients to life, if you will, and to be able to test them out in a much faster manner. I mean, I think clinical studies are going to get faster and faster now with the advent of AI, and models can be run faster. You can find patients to be able to test out drugs a lot quicker than used to be in the past. So I think all these are good developments. But to your point, the speed at which the society develops also indicates at the speed at which it's going to deteriorate, right? And that's I think the catch-22 that Paradox is going to be interested to see. So as we close this out, Erik, would love to hear, if for those who are tuning in, those who are listening, what are 2 or 3 pieces of advice you would give to a patient, a member, a consumer who just got diagnosed with, let's say, type 2 diabetes, regardless whether it's been going on for a while, but they just found out, for example, that they have type 2 diabetes. What are the top 2 or 3 things you would give them an advice on?
Well, first off, find a primary care physician you trust. And that probably is the key number one, because getting the lab tests ordered that will really monitor this process, getting the medications that you'll need to help you get to where you need to, and to control your blood sugars while you start to figure out the lifestyle side of it and get that implemented, that's going to be a key. Additionally, there is so much out there that is actually very positively informative of the kinds of lifestyle interventions that can positively impact diabetes. Certainly, your channel has a wealth of stuff on it, and there are others. So, trying to get plugged in with that kind of positive information to get yourself educated, empower yourself to take a positive role in this. The other thing I'd like to throw in there is for individuals who have a strong family history of diabetes but are not yet diabetic. There is monitoring that can be done very early to see if you're on the way there, way before your blood sugars go up. And I think that is an incredibly important thing to try and do. And also to try and, if your parents and grandparents are diabetic, if your older siblings are diabetic and you're not there yet, but you're a little bit overweight, start to educate yourself on what you would need to do from a lifestyle perspective, to treat yourself as a diabetic, and go ahead and intervene and prevent that process. Because the earlier you do it, the easier it is.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense, and that's a very, very good piece of advice. So, Erik, thank you for joining us. This has been obviously wonderful, and I truly enjoyed our conversation. Tell our listeners, our viewers, how they can find you and get in touch with you.
If you just look up Erik Schabert DO on YouTube, I have a channel called the Human Momentum Channel, trying to keep our momentum as we go through life here, to not let health issues trip us up. And they can find me there. And also you can reach me via email at my professional email, shabertems@gmail.com. I certainly would love to hear from anybody who's got questions.
That is fantastic, Erik. There you have it, folks. Another episode down in the books for the 5 Rivers podcast, and that's why we love bringing folks like Erik in front of you to share practical advice, to share unbiased, unfiltered responses to what's helping the community and controlling diabetes. Once again, this is Sandeep Misra. My name is Sandeep. And I am a co-founder at Heald. If you are looking for a diabetes reversal solution, please do reach out. We are at iheald.com. That is the letter I, HEALD.com. Be healthy, take care of yourself, and take care of each other. Thank you all.